open hands on the concrete. Feel everything that you've been with me. A monument to who you were. Before when you were thinking about love. I don't want the same as before. I don't want to settle for the past anymore. I don't want to fight the same fight, but I do. I don't want to know what kind of love with you. Come with me, 'cause we're never going back again. Come with me, we're gonna tear it down inside again. Come with me, 'cause we're never going back again. Come with me, 'cause you're all I need. We're gonna tear it all down, 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 down.
Let me actually turn my mic on, I guess. How is it going? Okay, so the big thing on the agenda today is Home Assistant beta came out. And on that, there was the beta said beta 1.0. Now, I mean, what does that mean? Right? Like, what does that mean? It can mean like ton of different things. How is the quality? It looks pretty bad, being honest. But regardless, kind of what we got from right now. I'm just here because I wanted to talk it out, you know, kind of talk what I think about Home Assistant 1.0. How's it going after dark, Jay after dark? And just kind of wanted to talk to you guys. Wanted to talk to just what I thought and kind of get your feedback and what you think as well. So yeah. So Home Assistant 1.0, right? Home Assistant 1.0. Whenever you think of 1.0 and you think about it in a sense of software, and if you were saying, you know, Spotify or Discord came out with a 1.0, you would think, okay, this is the finished version, right? It's done. It's no longer in a beta phase. It's no longer. It's done. You know, it's ready to go. It's ready to be released to the public. But Home Assistant isn't like a normal piece of software, right? It not backed by a couple of developers or a company of developers. It's backed by 4 or 5 developers plus a full community of different developers. It's basically it's an open source code. I mean, that's basically what it is it's managed by thousands and thousands of people. I think there was a tweet today that said that there was 8,000 different people, different unique individuals who contributed just to the core code. That's not even the front end. That's not even the documentation, which the documentation doesn't kind of build the product, but the front end does. And we had many people do there. I mean, that's where I'm from, but I think that overall it's not your normal type of software. It's not your normal type of software. It's not, while Nabukasa and the developers may have a set of goals for the year or set goals for the future for what they want to get done in a short and long period of time, it's not like they have, in Discord, it's like, we want this feature, and this feature, so that after that, it's done. Right? Hey, you aren't going to spoil all the stuff that's coming, are you? No, I'm not spoiling anything. I don't know anything, so but I'm just kind of talking my ideal 1.0, right? But it's going back, it's not your regular piece of software. But my ideal 1.0, what does that look like, right? So, all right, sorry, I'm going to read chat one more time real quick. Yeah, it's always growing, so it can never be done. I guess you could say it's a bit more stable and more features. Yeah, and I'll get into that here in a second. My ideal 1.0, right? For me as a front-end developer, it's more for the front end. That's kind of what I'm going to focus on, but I'll get to the back end as well. What I think, a 1.0 version of Home Assistant is, and that would be, I'd be able to go to my parents or my grandparents and be like, okay, here is Home Assistant. This is Home Assistant. I'd be able to bring that on a Raspberry Pi, or they'd be able to download that onto the computer and install it somewhere, right? Well, that would be my first version of 1.0, was that it would be easy enough for Home Assistant or for my grandparents to take Home Assistant and download it. That would be my version of 1.0. Now, that's just the first part of it, but the second part's being they would be able to navigate the user interface, the UI, the dashboarding, and all that without having to do much, to customize it. They wouldn't have to go in there and dig deep, and they wouldn't have to edit any YAML. They would never actually see YAML. They would never actually see a lot of the UI that we have today, because it's not worth it for them to have to do that. It's not worth it for them to have to go into the YAML. It's not worth it for them to have to go into and build automations. It's not worth it for them to go in there and have to do that all manually, right? It should be basically automatically done for them, and they can pick from a template type thing, or they could pick from a marketplace or something like that. I think Hacks is a great example of the direction of 1.0 that I think. This is all me. There's a disclaimer. I am not an Nabukasa employee. I am not related. I am not associated with them. I am a part of the Home Assistant community and a member of Home Assistant. But these are all my own thoughts. This is not coming from anywhere else. But that would be kind of where I would want it to be. And that's kind of where my focus has been for the last 2 years, is being able to get to that point where UI is so easy that my mom or my grandma would be able to go in there and say, okay, I need to turn on my lights, or I need to be able to, even if so we have ideas right now of how to make it the generated dashboard better. And that's where I think the best idea was. But if we were able to, for example, build something out that you had to go in there and create your own dashboard, that would be easy. That, okay, I want a light. I just need to add a light. that they don't need these extra options for the icon size of the button or all these different things that, those are the advanced level stuff. But in reality, that's just not needed. And really, being able to edit your own dashboard shouldn't be needed anyway. It should be built for you. It should be something that you go in there and it's basically ready to go. Maybe you can pick from different options. Like I want an area based one, or I want one that's based on my devices, or I want or a dashboard that's based on security or something like that. But I think that being able to move around the UI in a fashion where it's guided, it's to the point where I don't need to think about it. I don't need to go read documentation. That's another big thing is I think 1.0 it should be almost self-explanatory that no documentation would ever need to be read. To build a card, I shouldn't need to go to the card documentation to be able to build this card. I should be able to, if I have a question about something that this field does, I can hover over it or in the text box itself, it tells me, kind of explains to me in a very short sentence of what is it. The title displays on top of the card, or the name, it names the card wherever that is. Maybe it's a thermostat card and it names it underneath the thermostat, or it's the graph card and it names it underneath the graph, or whatever it is. Whatever card that is. And then going through and doing automations as well. It's, if I need an automation to make my thermostat go down to a certain temperature at a certain time, I want to be able to just say, I want my thermostat to go down, and here's my thermostat that I want to go down, and here's the temperature that I want it to go down to, and this is the time that I want it to go down to that temperature. That's as easy. That's how it should, that's how it should be. I had a mock-up for an automation editor that was basically that simple. It's pick and choose. It's, instead of having to write out for how long, it's, it's much simpler. You still have that advanced option. There's always that custom option for advanced users. I don't want to take anything away from you guys, but I think we all need to think about getting more people into Home Assistant. And that, in my opinion, and I said this in a Reddit post once, is more people in Home Assistant only means better things. One, not even that. We don't, like, as the Home Assistant community, we shouldn't want other people struggling on other platforms. Like, we know that Home Assistant is the best platform. It's the one that gives you the most power, one that gives you the most freedom, and it's also getting simpler and powerful while being simple and not so advanced. Didn't need to be advanced, right? Didn't need to be advanced to be powerful. And I think that is why it should be that we should work on getting the UI better. And that's why that's kind of been my main focus over the last 2 years of being able to get to that point. I'm not actually, I'll go into that in a second, but onward from the UI, right? We have the UI, we have the configuration, we have dashboards. I'm just trying to supervisor is a great tool. I think it has some things I would like it to do more, but overall, I think that, just looking at my supervisor now, I think that the supervisor does a lot of things for you, and I think that's the direction. Like, add-ons are great. I'm able to, pull in Motion Eye straight into my Home Assistant instance, and that automatically sets up that for me. I don't have to go through, set up a container. I don't have to go through and do all these things to be able to set up Motion Eye. So I think that, that idea kind of is what I would like. The add-on, it's kind of like a marketplace. It's kind of, I would want to go in there. I want to pull from automations from the marketplace. I want to be able to go in there and pull scripts from the marketplace. I want to be able to go in there and pull all these things from the marketplace and be able to, install those easily into my Home Assistant. Snapshots are great. System, it shows you everything about your system. You're able to go in and leave. All this stuff is great. I think the supervisor is great. So I'm going to move on from the UI. What I think, and what a lot of people think about not the UI section, but like the core section, all the breaking changes and all that stuff. Like I see a lot of posts in Reddit saying, every release I have a breaking change. Every single time, I have to go through and make sure that everything works, make sure that everything is okay, make sure that my heating system isn't broken, right? And it is a concern. That is something that if you are going to for reliability, and I've seen people come into Home Assistant Reddit and say, hey, I need to build out a full system for my apartment complex so that every one of my tenants has smart system. And people come in and it's like, how can I do that with Home Assistant? And a lot of people, and I don't blame them, and I'd probably say the same thing, you're like, don't use Home Assistant. It isn't stable. It isn't ready for that type of thing. It is more for the advanced user, tinkerer, someone who can do that kind of stuff, where they can go back and forth and make sure that everything works and tend to it. And you don't want to tend to every one of these installations, and you don't want to, try and tend to something and then, or give something to a user, one of your tenants, and then it break. And then now you're, they can't get into their door or something. Yeah. I will not say that Home Assistant at this point in time or ever will be in a state where every little thing is going to be okay. Like everything is going to be stable. But I think what everybody wants, what I think the ideal 1.0 would be, is more like we have, trying to think of the best wording. It's like, we have integrations and everything in Home Assistant. And in the add-on store, there's like a rating system. And let me look it up real quick. Like I can go to an add-on and it'll say rating of 5, right? Also, it has some other stuff like App Armor and stuff like that, right? I think that there should be a rating system for our integrations. Maybe there already is. And I haven't installed an integration like that in a while. But I would like a rating system like 7 and above can't have breaking changes for a whole quarter, right? Every half or something like that. Like 6 months, 3 months, they can't have a breaking change. They can have updates, bug fixes, or not even an update. They can't have features and they can't have breaking changes, right? They would be able to have bug fixes and hot fixes. But that would come on the maybe like weekly schedule or something like that for production releases. But I think that if we had like 7 and above, you had that time period where you could do breaking changes and features every 3 to 6 months. 4 to 7, it could be weekly or bi-weekly is when you could put out breaking changes or features. And then like a 1 to 3 would be something that just got added that would be breaking or not stable for every week. Like, every release could be a new breaking change. Now, another thought would be like, well, in that section, you're still having releases and stuff like that. Well, I think that's okay, right? So if we had a 1.0.0, right? If that was something that Home Assistant ever did, and from beta, it seems like they are, it would mean that 1.0.1 would be a weekly change. And that would be something that not everybody needed to update. It wouldn't notify them. But only if they, went out and went to an updater and was like, hey, I want the latest. And they would update to that. Or there would be a track, be the latest, and it would be every update. Or maybe it would be the cutting edge track. And then there would be a middle section. That'd be the second 0, the 1.0 part. If we went to 1.1, then that would be the mid-tier release. And maybe we even need to shift that down even more, because once you get to 1.0, you don't want to go to 2.0 and then 3.0 quickly. So maybe we go to 1.0.0.0, and the fourth digit is the release cycle, right? That's the weekly release cycle. The third digit is the bi-weekly release cycle, or maybe that's the quarterly release cycle, and then the second digit is the main release cycle. That's everybody will get an update. Everybody will be able to push that update. That'll happen maybe every 6 months. I think that is like in my opinion, and I am not going to say that I'm very skilled or very knowledgeable in this release cycles or all the different release cycles, but I think that could work. I think that overall, being able to do something like that and have people update whenever they wanted to and not bring features every single week, so that people would be trying to go to every release and then have breaking changes, right? I think that if we went to that release staging, then that's kind of my ideal 1.0. Now, is that something that is, is that good? I don't know. I think that it's different. I think that right now we have something that is very rapid, is very, is changing quickly. And if you don't want to update every release, you don't have to. That's up to you. And as an advanced user, that's on you. If you see that update button, don't just update. It's not smart, right? If you're an advanced user, you know that. You should look at the release cycle, and then if you see any breaking changes for your devices and you don't want to update those, then don't update. If you see a feature that you want, then you are choosing to say, I need to update these things to be able to get that feature. So, isn't it better to bring small breaking changes than bring a lot at once? Yeah. Well, I see what you're saying, because like saying every 3 months, we bring out breaking changes for all those. Yes and no. I mean, if we talk about it in a way there's a calendar UI that we use in Home Assistant. They have a number release, and it's like 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. They just released like 5.0 the other day, and they do that I think they've been releasing those every 6 months to a year. And then those are really big changes. There's a lot of breaking changes at once. But then also they have some little minorly major updates where it's like 1.2 or 2.2 or 3.2, whatever, in that iteration cycle, where they also bring breaking changes. And then, but they don't bring breaking changes in the other two numbers, like the other two digits. So 1.2.1 or 1.2.1.1, those wouldn't bring breaking changes. Because that is like why are we listening to a freaking podcast? Because that is like a lot of breaking change, or that would be bringing a lot of breaking changes all the time. And you still have to think about it in a way like Home Assistant isn't like that. It's not one product. It's a platform with a lot of products. Basically, it's a lot of integrations, which are basically a product within themselves. They had a lot of breaking changes recently to the way to 1.0 in their defense, but I see your point. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be arguments for either one. I think that what I explained is my ideal solution. Being able to say, okay, this is a major release. I need to go look at the breaking changes. I haven't done them in 6 months. They're probably going to be some changes to the API, and that's another thing. And I'll get into that later. But because of different APIs and stuff, it is hard to be on that kind of release cycle. But let's go into like what I think 1.0 would mean for Home Assistant, right? And we kind of already touched on it a little bit. It would basically mean less frequent releases. And that's kind of the whole point of that, right? Less frequent releases. What does that mean? Well, that means less features, constantly. That means less updates to the UI. It means less cards are added, less big features are added, less additions to the cards that we currently have are added. You would start seeing, it would be stagnant. You would have Home Assistant, and that's Home Assistant. And you wouldn't see another feature in addition to Home Assistant for 6 months. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. It kind of depends, right? Of course, I think there should always be a beta channel, and I'd be one of those people that would have to run that beta channel because I'd want to see those new things. And like Oceanic said, is it a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, it's only a bad thing if you want that new release, if you want to be on that bleeding edge, you want those new features, and you're staying, up to date on what those new features are. You're gonna get antsy and like, oh, I want those new features. I don't want to wait, and I'm really bad for that as well. I'm very impatient. So I think it's hard to say that. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I think if there was a beta channel and you would get every release and it would be known that there's going to be breaking changes and that's fine with you, then you stay on the beta track. Do I think it's a bad thing that would be every 6 months? No, I don't. I think if I was going to give my mom or grandmother, I wouldn't want them updating basically ever. I would want them to stay here until a new feature that they needed or the API broke. But what else would this mean? That would mean, you would get less updates. You would get less features. I kind of went over that. We wouldn't be able to get as much packed into every release, or we wouldn't be able to get as much to everyone as fast as possible. I think that would also I think that would hurt the open sourceness of it. I think that a lot of people develop and contribute to Home Assistant. I mean, this is just my thoughts. They contribute to Home Assistant because they think, okay, I can go ahead and contribute to Home Assistant here, put this API in here, add this feature, and in 3 weeks, if my feature gets accepted really quickly and we're good to go, I would say that it's normally a short turnaround time on those type of things. If I do that, then I can see my feature in 3, maybe 6 weeks, which is a pretty short amount of time. For the front end, it's a little different. I know it's a lot faster for the front end. For the back end, I know that PRs are still in there from a long time ago. But regardless, I think that a lot of people go in there because they know that they can see their contribution rather quickly. But that also would mean that they could be on the beta channel. They would be able to see their release. Maybe they would be able to see their contribution there, and then try it out, and that would make a better stable release once we get there. Yeah, I mean, I think that, to be honest, I think that'd be fine. I think if there was a beta track and you're able to stay on every single release pretty easily, then it's almost better than what I was thinking. I mean, I think that that's pretty fine. Now, bigger question, or let me reach out real quick. I also have to admit that a lot of breaking changes didn't impact. The only thing I'd like to see is before updating, I get a message, and this is part of your system will break. Yeah. I don't know. I think the same way. I think that not much breaks for me. I mean, I don't have that many devices, and I would bet that a lot of people using Home Assistant, because I know there are a lot of people using Home Assistant, more than the community probably thinks, that what was I saying? But a lot of people don't see those breaking changes. The breaking changes are usually only for people who are using they're using really not cheap, not knockoff, but like really out there hardware, maybe. Maybe it's in Zigbee and Z-Wave is not bad, but they are known to be harder to integrate. Maybe it's stuff like that where it's a different type of hardware. It's not your normal your rating scale of 7 to 10. It doesn't deviate from the 7 to 10 rating from what I was talking about earlier. I think that like a lot of people don't see those breaking changes, and that's why a lot of we continue doing these updates, and we hear a few people coming back and saying, "Oh, hey, this breaks every single time," and that's a very minimal amount of people comparatively, and those people have probably thousands of entities, hundreds of devices, and it's bound to happen that one of those devices, one of those APIs breaks. Yeah, I never really see or have an issue with things breaking. I rarely have to go in there and change my configuration ever because of that. And let's say that we do the rating system, or not we, but say Home Assistant as a whole does a rating system, and you're at a 10, that should mean that you're basically never going to have a breaking change, that this API has been solid for a while. It's not looking like it's ever going to go down. It's not looking like it's ever going to change. I don't know an API like that. I don't really have that many devices to say that. Let's say just because I'm looking at something Wise, right? We don't even have an API for that. Let's say that Wise came out with an API. They were like, this is solid for the next 3 years. We're not going to change it. And then in 3 years, we're going to update it. Well, then that should be, that's a level 10. It's not going to change. You're not going to have breaking changes. It's going to be solid for those 3 years. And in 3 years, we have to update it, and that's a breaking change, then that's fine. I mean, like, things have to change. And that's kind of getting into my next point of, is 1.0 even achievable for Home Assistant? Like, is it something that all of these things can be answered? In my opinion, no. I don't think so. I don't think that 1.0 is something that is hard achievable for Home Assistant. If we went with the way that I kind of explained, maybe, but then we have to get to a point where we have enough integrations at that level 7 to 10 that are never going to be changing, that rarely have any breaking changes and rarely need updates. Right? The reason that 1.0 is so hard to be achievable is because we rely on so many different APIs. We rely on so many different products. Home Assistant is a platform with many products underneath it, basically. And that's kind of how I see it. Is Home Assistant is kind of like the dashboarding and the connection, while the products in there just kind of slot in there. They're little building blocks of Home Assistant, but they're different products. They are. While they have a conjoined ecosystem that they all connect to in the back end of Home Assistant, it's still, each one of those APIs is a product. Each one of those integrations is a product. And that product has to be maintained. And is that product on 1.0? Is that product, in that 7 to 10 rating scale? Will this API ever change? It's in none of that. That's the biggest thing that I don't think a lot of people will understand, is that Home Assistant doesn't control all of their integrations, because the company controls that API. The company controls whether or not they're going to continue offering that API. For example, let's just take IFFT, if this then that, or IFTTT, or whatever it's called. Let's say that we had an API for that, right? They seemed fine. It looked great, but it was a cloud system. Well, now that, they changed it so you have to pay for it. It's not technically an API. It's not really a good example, but that's an example of company can change it and make it either paid or just completely shut down the API altogether. What is one of those? Wink shut down their API, right? A lot of things have recently, I've been seeing in the Twitter, being shutting down their local API. And that just kind of breaks the device. Even if you think that this is a done API because it's a big company, they're not going to change it, they can just completely remove it. They're more, it's very likely that they can do that, especially now because a lot of people are using it and they're not getting their money worth on you being a free API user, especially if it's a cloud service. Somebody has to pay for it eventually. Now, whether you are a cloud user or not a cloud user, or you're a fully local user or not, even those APIs can break. If the internet sends an update to your device, I think that happened to T-Link or something like that recently. Like they sent an update to the device which killed the local API. It's like, well, I had a local API. Why does it not work anymore? Well, there you go. It's still connected. And I mean, I guess if you're fully local, then maybe you're not connected to the internet at all. Maybe use Z-Wave and stuff like that, which would be nice, but not everybody does. And I would say a majority of people don't, but that's just my. Yeah. HomeKit is the safest bet if you care for local APIs. Yeah, I don't know that much about HomeKit to be honest, so I don't want to talk about it, or I won't get into it that much. But I have heard HomeKit is nice, but yeah. Why didn't someone tell me to click that bell for notifications for this? Yeah, sorry, I try not to do that. I try not to say click that bell, subscribe, like the video that often. So, yeah, click that bell. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. You can always go back. The video will be eventually it'll be put on YouTube. It has to go through a rendering system or something, and then YouTube finally puts it out. Hopefully the quality is not too bad and people will actually watch it back. But I think Paulus's idea of it's just a number in the end isn't wrong. All the 0.x versions have always brought changes, some of which were major, like automation editor, devices, areas. Yeah. You're right. It is just a number, and then it shouldn't matter if we're ever 1.0. And if it is just a number, it's still not just a number. Because while I may know it's just a number, you may know it's just a number, someone on the outside may not just know it's just a number. They may say that's 1.0. Okay, I'm going to install 1.0. Okay, well, why doesn't this work? Why am I not able to do this? Oh, that's still a feature in development, whatever. Why this doesn't seem done? Will it ever be done? Well, is there ever a time where it's like somebody can say, yeah, that's done? Probably not, but it is hard to say 1.0. But it's just my that is just my opinion. So many emails. The end goal would be not to use YAML at all. Maybe V1.0 will be that. Yeah. Don't say that. People don't like that. I think to not have to use YAML is the better example. It's if I send this, a Raspberry Pi with Home Assistant on it and say, hey, go ahead and just, it's on there. All you have to do is set it up on your system, your Wi-Fi, and it'll automatically boot. You'll have to go to this address and you'll be ready to go. They should never have to touch YAML. Never. For any integration. That would be my ideal goal. I was expecting drag and drop the release. When is it going to release? Eventually. But I'm not going to get into that. That's not what this is about. About APIs, you saw that TP-Link has done. You had a local API and they shut it down. Yeah. That's what I was saying earlier. It's I think TP-Link did that. And yeah, it's you have a local API, but then they updated your device and took it away. They allowed you to roll back, but you're still giving that power to the company be able to send updates to your device and say, I can take that away from you anytime I want. Right? It's just kind of the thing of the game. A lot of IoT devices, which is Internet of Things, are connected to a cloud. Yes, there are local stuff, but that is more advanced. It is more advanced to be local. You could say it's not more advanced, but it is. It is much, it's much more advanced to not just have something connect to the Wi-Fi. Go to get a TP-Link, connect to the Wi-Fi, and connect it to your Home Assistant and use it that way. That is much better and much more user-friendly than having to go through, set it up to be local, set it up, take it off the Wi-Fi, all these other things you have to do to be local. It would be much easier if I could just go to the store, buy something that connected to my Wi-Fi, plug it into an outlet, say now I want to connect this via Home Assistant. I want to have a button on my dashboard that says I can turn this on and off and go with it that way. That's it. Should be plug and play. And we have discoverability in Home Assistant, where if I connect it to my internet, Home Assistant will automatically know that it's connected. Give me an option to integrate that into Home Assistant, and that should be, in your notifications or even on your Lovelace dashboard if you use generated, and say, hey, we noticed that this is now on the network. Would you like to integrate that into Home Assistant? We have the integration for that. You can say yes, set it up, put in your whatever information they need. Hopefully none. Maybe you have to authenticate, but that's pretty easy. But Moppy Lock 1.0 equals stable enough for my grandmother to use. I mean, basically, kind of. I mean, that's kind of what I've been getting at, right? I guess. Let's say you have 1.0 and that doesn't require YAML tinkering, which means HA is full control, and maybe you have less breaking changes, but they can leave YAML, but then you are using YAML. Yeah. And that might be more breaking changes. Yeah. And that's a big thing is like, maybe it's not, maybe it is, but if you're using the UI, we can use that data better, I think. Because like if you're in YAML, then that configuration is set. We don't touch that YAML. It isn't changed. And we can't just like ask you for extra configuration for that device. If you're in the UI and maybe kind of what you were talking about, Adano, about, a prompt that says this is broken, you need to fix it. We could set up a way of saying, okay, this is going to be a breaking change, and what you need to do is just re-authenticate. Or maybe what you do is you need a little bit more information to be able to continue with this because now they require it. And maybe they're not ever that easy, but maybe they are. Let's say they are. All you have to do is bring up the UI whenever they load that release, say, hey, this is broken right now. Click to fix. You click to fix. You authenticate again. You're ready to go. I know that kind of happened with Spotify recently. All I had to do is go back I had to deauth and reauth back into, Home Assistant back into Spotify. Super easy. And if we had a prompt that said you just had to do that and you just click the button to do that, then it was super easy. I'm ready to go. I know my grandmother has a Home Assistant running at her house. Don't have to do too much tech support. I guess 1.0 would be approaching the mass market friendly. She uses Plex though. Yes. I think that approaching the mass market is a good idea. Reason for that is I know a lot of people don't want Home Assistant to go to the mass market because that means that they're always afraid of company being more focused on money instead of more focused on their users or more focused on the product. And I think that we have a good base. And the founder of Home Assistant, I've talked to him a lot. Really talked to him a lot. I don't think he's going to. You can see he tweets about these things. You follow him on Twitter. He'll go down and be like, hey, this is a shit company because they did this to their users. They stopped supporting this, or they killed in local API. He wants everybody to go local. He encourages it, shows you the idea of going local, what you need to do that, what means not local, and when it's a cloud-based system, like if you're not paying for it and it's cloud-based, and you're going to have to pay for it eventually, selling the $20 product isn't going to cut it. So those costs keep coming. And you're being more expensive as time goes on. You're going to be, it's going to be costing more to keep you on as a user than it is that $20 product. So yeah, hitting mass market, that will bring, and I don't want to, I'm not an Abacasa employee. No, I do not hold their values. Their values are not what I am displaying. Their values may be completely different. I just want to get that straight. I'm only a Home Assistant member. This is my thoughts. More users means more people connecting to Nabukasa, means more people paying for Nabukasa, getting that service, which is a great service for $5. Like, holy shit, this is a great service for $5. Which means more money for Nabukasa. They're not just going to keep these, how many, 7, 8 developers they have now and keep, wallowing in their money. They're going to continue hiring more people in the community already, like they already have done, which is awesome. I used to work with Brahm and I started on the front end around the same time. He started in the back end a little bit before then, but Brahm and I started the same time in the front end, and we both worked getting the UI editors out, and Brahm was like on the forefront of planning all this and being with Paulus and updating and going through and helping him and kind of structuring how those should be, and we all did it together. But at the end of the day, Brahm was there at the end. He was still going. He still continued. I took a little bit of a break, and I think Brahm has a ton of experience in all this in coding and a lot more experience in that section. Paulus saw that he was a good asset, that he's a good asset that's going to continue working. Paul's going to be like, okay, he's going to continue working on Home Assistant. Why? I don't need to hire him for him to continue working. That's not what he did. He said, okay, I want you to continue working. I'm going to pay you for it because I think you're doing awesome work. Well, I, basically know you're going to continue working anyway. I'm going to go ahead and hire you. And now Brahm gets to do his dream job. Again, I don't know Sid's dream job. Brahm gets to do an awesome job that I know he loves, that he would probably be doing a good amount of without getting paid, right? So like hiring from the community is always great, and that's what they're doing. It's not like they're hiring random people coming in here bringing their random ideas that have nothing to do with Home Assistant, like Frank and Ludius. Ludius is an incredible member of the community. All these people are just awesome members of the community that they hired on. And I think that should show you that they're not just another company. They're not just another entity wanting to make money, right? I don't know. That's just my thoughts. I think he once said he got offers to sell data and he turned them down, right? There have been talks about, I'm not going to do that. There have been, Paulus has, I'm sure Paulus gets talked to emails daily to sell our data. He doesn't collect anything, by the way, to sell. Nothing is collected from anyone. I think maybe you can collect data if you have supervisor and you have to opt in to send them crash reports, and that is the first amount of data that I've seen them even but collect. And that was an opt-in solution that they're like, hey, we want to make this better. We're not going to make you do this. This will help us. Will you let us collect some reports? And it's just crash reports. It's not even anything about how you're using your data or anything like that. Literally just crash reports. And we know this because we can see the code. We know what's happening. Like it's not like they're hiding it. You can't. It's open source. You can just go in there and say, hey, this code is collecting my data. I don't want to use it. But you can't. You cannot go into Home Assistant, look through their code, and say this code is collecting my data, because it doesn't. Without Nabokasa, if you pay for it, you are actually enabling people who can't afford it, though, have an awesome updates. Exactly. Let's say that they don't want to use Nabokasa, or they can't afford it, or they just don't use it because they don't need to, because they don't have anything to like Google Assistant or Amazon, right? You're paying for those people to use it and have a great, awesome Home Assistant experience. And I know a lot of people in the community pay for Nabokasa and don't even use it just because they want to help fund the development of Home Assistant, because it is such a great piece of software for free. And $5 a month, what is that? What is 5 times 12? Like 60? Probably 60. I have an engineering degree, but I just did 5 times 60, and it was like, oh man, that's wrong. Oh yeah, 5 times 12 is 60, right? $60 a year to run your whole automation system, right? Your home automation system. That's crazy. Like, that's crazy. I know a lot of people spend that much on just devices to put in their automation system, and a lot of people will say, well, Google's free, or Amazon Alexa is free. I don't have to pay them monthly. It's like, well, you're paying them monthly in your data. You're paying them monthly in ads. You're paying them monthly in a lot of things. So would you rather pay your money in real money and see that going, this is going to a good cause? Well, it is still paying for salaries, which is a good cause. It's still going and helping fund the continued development. Like, if everybody just stopped paying, then Home Assistant would, the direction of Home Assistant would be really hard. And the amount of, improvements we had over the last few years would really start to slow down, because it's harder to get more people involved, harder to get a full view. Paulus is just one person, and Paulus and Pascal, they're the two founders, so I would assume that they would stay and keep on staying. I use DNS. It seems to do what I need, but Nabokasa does give an into if they want to start cutting free services. Yeah. If you don't want to pay for Nabokasa, I'm not saying you have to, and I'm not saying you're a bad person because you don't. I'm saying it does go and help a good piece of software, a good, awesome platform, and I would consider it if you could afford it. If you can't afford it, don't do it. Not worth it. So, I'll actually use Nabokasa to support them, and the benefits are just an extra I wouldn't necessarily need. Yeah, I could set up DuckDNS. I did it before I even knew what Nabokasa was. Maybe it was before Nabokasa really offered that service when I did it. I don't remember when I did it. But yeah. And as soon as Nabokasa, it's such an easy way to do it. Such an easy way. Such an easy way to do what DuckDNS does. All I have to do is set up Nabokasa, pay the $5. I think I paid $10 because I do my dev instance as well, just because. I pay $5. Gives me a URL. I can sign in anywhere. I have put zero time into actually figuring out DuckDNS, into configuring that. And it's a pain in the ass to, keep on. I know that DuckDNS goes down a lot, probably a lot more than AWS East 1, even though it went down the other day and everybody got all up in arms. $6 isn't much, but at the time, investment is quite a bit more than out of the box to implement HA. Yeah, of course, investment, and it's more. It's Home Assistant is free. It's just your time that you're spending. And a pain, you get more developers. I don't know what that says. That makes it more awesome stuff. I think you mean like more money, but paying, you get more developers. Yeah, but paying, you get more developers. Yeah, got it. And that makes more awesome stuff. That brings more users, and that also pay $5 and enables them to get in. Yeah, it's just a positive feedback loop, like you're saying. You pay for their $5, which then, those developers who were getting paid the $5 put out a vision. Put out, this is what we're going to do. that pulls in more people because now we're paying, for those developers to create their ideas and put their ideas out on paper and in development. That pulls in new people. They pay $5. Continued effort. I mean, they've employed how many people over the last year? Like, it's crazy. It's awesome. And just, stacks on top of each other, and the better software we get. You can't tell me that Home Assistant a year ago is not better. You can't tell me that Home Assistant now is not better than Home Assistant a year ago. Because it is 100% better, right? Like, there's no question that Home Assistant is better now than it was a year ago. Was it bad a year ago? No. But it's much better now. I mean, it's a lot easier to use. And you're still able to do all your advanced things. So, yeah, I can only see it going good. Actually, I have that in my notes, how this conversation started. It's just a number. But I guess the next question is, when's V2? I saw that in Reddit. That's funny. When's V2, man? If we're getting V1, then it has to be a V2, right? Yeah. Home Assistant 1.0. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool. I think that we should all go to the conference and see and just hear the vision of what this next release means. What is this next release? What is coming in the future? What are all these sessions about? It's awesome to see all these sessions and all these things, and I'm doing one, but it's awesome to see that we're bringing in the community members to talk about their experiences, talk about the things that they're passionate in, because Namakasa and Home Assistant know that it isn't just Namakasa. It's building Home Assistant. It's everybody in the community, and having these members, having them talk and having them be able to show their hard work and get gratification about their hard work. I mean, they get it every day. Being able to, stand in front and say, I helped build Home Assistant because, and they're here, they're in the literal Home Assistant conference because they were able to do something awesome in Home Assistant, and Paulus and everybody, Namakasa saw that and were like, hey, that's awesome. You're an awesome part of the community. Did great. Continue doing great. Would you like to speak in our conference? And that's amazing. V2 could hopefully come up with wizards for setting up pretty common automations for found on integrations. Programmer could maybe use it. I think that should be V1. It should be V1. I don't know what V2 would be. More integrations? I don't know. I think that should be V1. I think that would be awesome. I think it should already be here. I think that we've kind of covered everything. Out of my notes, went on longer than I thought. I'm glad we had a lot of chat interaction, and this will be up as a video later. If anybody wants to go back and watch it, and I'll post about it later. But it was awesome to chat with you guys. It was awesome to talk about this and what I think Home Assistant 1.0 is, what I've always had in the back of my mind about what Home Assistant 1.0 is, and will it ever happen? Will I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what it means. The 1.0, the conference will be going over this next release. All us kind of going over this release, and the other developers going over this release and what's in it. And that's kind of like the after party, and the release notes are all going to be kind of this conference. Basically, everything should be summed up. Yeah, I think it's cool. I think the direction that we're going is awesome. It's interesting. We'll see what the keynote says. I don't know the keynotes. I know some of the talking points in the sessions, but I don't know much about the keynotes. I'm pretty damn excited about them, to be honest. I really love keynotes and conferences. I even like the Apple keynote just because new stuff. I mean, I love hearing about the vision, about where the company is going, whether that's Apple, whether that's Google, whether that's Home Assistant. I love knowing what their vision is and, where that would take me and how that would affect me and how that would help me in the future. One of my favorite videos back in high school was a Corning glass video. It's they make like the Gorilla Glass and stuff, but the video is called "A Day Made of Glass," and it was just a vision of everything made of glass. And while, I mean, with COVID and everything, it's pretty gross, but just the concept of having your house engulfed in glass and have everything interactive and everything smart. It's basically the biggest smart home you can get. You can just swipe your tablet up and it just shows you up on the screen. It's like Iron Man. It's awesome stuff. I always love seeing the future and what people think the future holds and how it kind of molds into that, what they think and how they mold the future to do what they want it to do. Always interesting. And I think that community also has a big effect on the future, and Paulus and Home Assistant know that as well. I mean, he always has been, having the community as part of what becomes the future, and that's awesome. But I'm going to go to bed. I honestly didn't mean for it to go this long, but this is awesome. I fucking love this. I want to do more stuff like this and continue doing my regular videos. But no thanks. I think you said this. Make sure you told me to do this. You told me to do this. This is the reason I'm doing this. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Follow me on Twitter. And all the information should be probably in my bio. We hit 6, actually, GitHub sponsors today, which is fucking amazing. Thank you, guys. This is going great. It's a lot better. The YouTube is growing a lot more than I thought it was, and that's a lot of help from Home Assistant, Hollis retweeting my tweets and getting the exposure out there. But overall, I think, in my opinion, I like the content that I'm putting out. I think it's helpful. That's the whole reason I ever want to do it, is to help people. I think that the stuff in my head and what I know about Frontend should be out there and for everybody to know and show how easy it is to build some of these things. Yeah. All right, guys. This was fun. Do it again. And have a good night or good morning, wherever you are.